Hi, I'm going to do this really quick with the front-facing camera of my iPad because that's how things are these days. I've just been working way too much and getting around to editing things has never been easy for me, even when I did it relatively regularly, which was like a decade ago. So I'm sitting on the floor with a bunch of old Macs, PowerPC, and one Intel Mac behind me in my 2008 WWDC shirt to just throw out my thoughts based on no knowledge that you can't find very easily for the keynote that's this morning / tomorrow, depending on where you are. So number one, I don't think it's going to be that big of an event in terms of all these massive rumors of so many pieces of hardware. I think more than anything, it's going to be a WWDC keynote with a couple products that are future releases due to the nature of the silicon market and the nature of the fact that you can't really cannibalize your own sales when you're going to announce that you will soon replace a product that you a year ago said you would soon replace. You know, that you're basically going to be saying more of our Intel stuff is going away. We know that. If anyone's buying Intel stuff now, they either are sure they need Intel or they're truly desperate for a replacement. So they don't hurt themselves. They can't Osborne themselves by telling you what's coming out in end of the year and save the effort of another event. So I think we're going to get, I know we're going to get some, at least this 14-inch Pro in some way, shape, or form, but it wouldn't shock me if it doesn't sell for months. But I think you want to get that in before back to school. And I do think there's a decent chance that it actually uses an M2, a second generation unit, with the M2/A15, this year's core, because that's going to help that with potentially, but not likely, these mini LED displays and a couple other little features along with the redesign will help justify the pricing of a Pro, 14-inch Pro being higher than an Air, because right now it's incredibly hard to justify paying for a MacBook Pro. It just doesn't make any sense to buy the Pro when the Air exists with the same chip and you can get more features for cheaper, and in almost every use case that's better. I don't see why you'd buy a Pro. I just don't see it. And I'm a Pro Mac buyer. I just can't see why you'd buy an M1 Pro versus an M1 Air. So likely, I'm assuming, keep the M1 in the air for a while longer. Through back to school, sell off a bunch of these M1s, but then try and get the 14-inch Pro out there in the same time frame, July, August, so that you can have a differentiator and actually sell them for the prices you want to. We're in a silicon shortage, and yet Apple stuff's on sale constantly because they're great and they've sold a ton of Macs. But they're all the same Mac, so it's hard to justify the prices over the $900 because anyone can get education pricing, base model. You can say, yeah, I want the iMac. Okay, so you pay a couple $100 more. No, I don't want the super gimped one. But again, anyway, the Air's too good, so you need to keep it a generation behind. And so that's why I think the M2 might come out. Plus, the 13-inch class of MacBook Pro has never had the high-powered processors. It's always been like a 25-watt kind of processor. So it's likely to be the M2, not like an M1X. And it's possible that an M2 has a totally different architecture than an M1. But anyway, I know we're going to get something, or almost certain that we'll get something announcement-wise, but not necessarily right for sale anytime soon, but that 14-inch. It's also likely that the 16-inch and the beefier Mini will have teasers or announcements, but it's not clear how much of that will come out. Again, the only reason they're going to announce it ahead of time at all is the same reason that they occasionally announce things at WWDC that are coming in end of the year for pros. The iMac Pro and the 2019 Mac Pro. There's nothing to cannibalize, so why not tell you it's coming? And my concerns, I've got concerns about the M1X and the 16-inch because my biggest concern with the M1 is still there. and that is there's not really that much graphics power there. And Macs have never been, okay, it's been a long time since Macs are remotely competitive in the graphics space. There's so much stuff that those chips do really well, but straight up GPU, and especially just like gaming with your GPU, they've been lagging behind. And I think it's very clear that a 16-core GPU with the M1 GPU design is going to at best match a 5600M, which is a 2-year-old chip, 2-year-old GPU. And that's just not good enough. It's fine for your base, but to say to your most expensive, you know, your $4,000 to $6,000 MacBook Pro customers, oh, yeah, you get the same chip as the $2,500 MacBook Pro customer, and that just means it's the same graphics power as something that somebody's going to be dumping onto the used market very soon. You know, these year-old 5600Ms and whatnot. That's not good enough. So there has to be a bigger solution. I doubt it's just, hey, you can get the same graphics and twice the CPU. That's not good enough. So there's probably more trickery, but I don't know, you know, and more that we don't know about. But yeah, I'm not convinced that we're ready to see an M1X. I think you're going to go M1, M2, M2X, and just skip the X under the M1 branding. The chip and cores are already almost a year old. To put your high-end stuff onto just, oh, it's more of something from last year is silly. To keep your low-end stuff on the same chip for a couple years is probably fine. Like I would say this Air is good through the end of the year, and then sometime next year you use the new colorful Air, and that's when it gets an M2 because the Pros are getting close to an M3. And again, I hear the argument, I get the argument that you won't get every year upgrades, but I think you will because they're already doing 90% of the work. And if you look at the rumor trees like Jade 2 Chop, Jade 2 Die, or whatever, Jade C2, whatever the code names of these things are, you can see that's definitely going to be a chiplet kind of thing. So I think they could end up with basically, you know, no more than the current number, which is 2, of active designs every year. There's a phone-sized SoC. Maybe it's 3, you know, but it's 2 or 3. It's that mini SoC. It's a bigger SoC / chiplet. And possibly those are 2 different things. Possibly the chiplet and a bigger SoC. Possibly the chiplet is made out of parts of the bigger SoC. And that's sort of your deal. And then you can use stuff. Look at how these things work. Older iPads and things use a couple, you know, older iPads, things like the Apple TV, they use a couple year old designs. So you're going to keep the M1 around. You're going to have an M2 this year. You're going to have M2X or whatever. But it'd be absurd to come out with an M1X after an M2, and I believe that there's an M2. I think that makes more sense than an M1, and I do believe there's actually large hurdles to scaling up all parts of this performance, but Apple has proven for many years that there's not really hurdles to getting 10 to 25% more power and efficiency every year. So if you can say the new redesigned 14-inch MacBook Pro with even longer battery life and even more power and a better display and a better webcam and better ports, then you've got something. Anyway, that's the biggest thing I expect to see hardware-wise. Software, other than iPadOS hopefully getting better. I love my iPad, but there's no reason it can't do more. I have no idea what's happening software-wise, and honestly, anything other than the 14-inch coming a few months from now, I think is gravy tomorrow. I think everything else you could announce as late as October. There's no reason it has to be tomorrow. The rumors are pretty solid that something's coming, but I don't see why, and it wouldn't shock me if it didn't. Anyway, I hope everyone enjoys this keynote, and by everyone I mean the 3 people who will stumble across this video. But I hope we all check out this keynote, and I hope I'm wrong and there's even more going on. I am excited. I am very much looking forward to replacing my current 2 Macs, which are a 2009 Mac Pro with a lot of upgrades and a 2013 15-inch Retina MacBook Pro. Both of them are in need. I've got cash available, but I don't have a replacement I'm ready for yet. I would love to just grab a 2019 Mac Pro. Except that even with unlimited money, you knew it was a stopgap. And the same with a 16-inch MacBook Pro. I've owned multiple, and I've returned every one of them because it's a freaking great machine. But it feels like it's a step towards the truly great machine. And I don't know, I might still end up with a 16-inch Intel MacBook Pro if I get a good deal on a 5600M. Then, I mean, that's a computer. That's the only computer I could imagine if I had to give up, collections. If I had to give up having a collection and a lot of computers around myself again, I could run off a loaded up 16-inch MacBook Pro as my only PC, my only computer. And I say PC there on purpose because half of what I do is use my PC for gaming. My Mac is the only thing I'll ever do any work on. I cannot even figure out how humanity functions with Windows as anything other than what you launch to get Steam open. But I do use Steam. I do play games when I have a spare minute. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to have to maintain more computers because where Apple is in the world, at least for a while. There's a chance I replace my 2013 with a 2019, just buy used and spend like $2,000 for something that would have been $4,500 rather than spend like $4,500 on a brand new laptop that doesn't actually serve me better. So we'll see. I'm excited. This is a lot longer than I wanted to be. I might know that something's allergy-wise. I'm really itchy here. But let's all have a good keynote, and hopefully we get 8 million different products, but most likely it's, Mac OS has a few updates. iPad OS is a little bit more useful. iOS has a few gimmicks, and there's a few exciting products coming soon. Anyway, great. Let's all have a great WWDC keynote day. Good night.